Good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing today? Hope you're staying happy and healthy. So we have a really awesome talk today. I'm really excited about today's talk. It's going to be really fun. But after today's talk, right after today's talk, we actually have a Project Aware Ocean Ambassador Workshop. So if you're interested in getting involved in marine conservation, this is a really great course, all online. So if you're interested, we have a few spots left on today's course. And then on Friday, we have another really awesome talk with Jay, and Dr. Frida Lara is joining us again to talk about the megalodon and other ancient shark species. So we're finishing up Shark Week with talking about the megalodon. And then on Saturday, we have our shark conservation course. So learning about shark biology, shark conservation, the threats that sharks face, all of these amazing things on Saturday. So make sure you get signed up. We still have spots. You can sign up on the Ocean Stories schedule. And then next week, we are really excited to present the start of Whale and Cetacean Week on Ocean Stories. So we have some awesome people coming on. Starting on Monday, we have Ted Cheeseman coming on to give us an intro to our beloved humpback whales. Ted is the founder of Happy Whale, which is, for those of you that don't know, it's an incredible organization connecting humans to marine life through citizen science, forming one of the largest whale identification databases. On Tuesday, May 12th, we have Ricky from La Paz talking to us about marine mammal rescue and what it's like to be on the front lines of rescuing and disentangling whales, sea lions, dolphins, things like that, and what some of the threats and the challenges are on the front lines of marine animal conservation. And then on Saturday, we have our first whale conservation course. So make sure that you sign up for that. It's going to be the first one that we're offering. It's going to talk about the biology. It's something that we formed based on a project that we started with Sea Shepherd about the conservation of the whales in the Baja area. So make sure you check that out. But today we have Dr. Tania Pelamatti joining us, talking about the shark and ray love, the reproduction of sharks and rays. So Tania, how are you doing today? Oh, so just turn your microphone on.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I'm doing good. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Of course. Well, I'm super excited about this talk. This is something that's a super interesting topic. So I'm really excited to get started on your presentation. So whenever you're ready, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'll let you begin.
Okay, perfect. So I share my presentation, my screen, right?
Perfect.
Okay. I hope it will work. Okay. Here we are. Okay, can you see it?
That looks awesome.
Okay, here we go.
Yes, that's perfect.
Okay, perfect. So thank you very much, Ellen and Jay and Ocean Stories for inviting me to give this talk. So it's I think a very interesting topic that most of the people don't know anything about it. And so when Jay invited me, I decided that it was gonna be my topic for this presentation. So I'm gonna start introducing you a little bit about me and why I'm talking about sharks and rays reproduction to you today. So I'm a marine biologist and I just finished in December my PhD working on my thesis about manta rays and how the plastic pollution could be affecting the mantas in the Mexican Pacific Ocean. And I've been working together with Pelagios Cacunja and with CCMAR. There are two institutions and an NGO that work here in La Paz. So I'm currently in Mexico, but I was originally from Italy. And I came here to Mexico for the first time in 2014 with an internship with CCMAR. So during that time, I was working with reproduction. So I was studying in specifically the reproduction of the bat ray here in Mexico, in the Mexican Pacific. And I was working with fishermen. As you can see here in this picture, I was working, taking samples from the specimen that fishermen were catching. And I was sampling the reproductive system to be able to do some morphology and some histology studies. So I was basically understanding how the reproductive system developed in the animals. So how mature animals and immature animals look like under the microscope. So that's what I was doing, and during that period I started getting very interested in this aspect of the shark's life that very few people know about, and I think is very extremely interesting and very curious. So let's talk about sharks. So sharks and rays are fish, but they are a very different kind of fish compared to the goldfish or the salmons that we all know. So they are chondrichthyes, so they are cartilaginous fishes. It means that their skeleton is made of cartilage, so they have a skeleton much more flexible. It's like our nose or ears, okay? While the other fishes, like the goldfish, have a skeleton that is made of bones, so they are called bony fishes, okay? And sharks and rays are very, very ancient. Actually, they evolved around 450 million years ago. Actually, way before the dinosaurs came on the Earth, or evolved on the Earth. And so they are way more ancient than the dinosaurs. And actually, they even survived to the big mass extinction that happened during the Cretaceous period, during which the dinosaurs got extinct, but also 3 every 4 species of marine species got extinct. So the sharks were very, very resistant to this mass extinction, and so they survived, and they had the opportunity to get very diverse. So they nowadays, let's see if it goes on. Okay, so they got very diverse in all these millions of years. So as you can see nowadays we have more than 1,000 different species of sharks and rays, and they have very, very different morphologies. So as you can see here, we have the whale sharks that are the biggest fish into the oceans, but also there are very small sharks, like the lantern shark that can fit on the palm of your hand. So there are some sharks that have a hammer in their head, some sharks that have a soul, sometimes some sharks that are flat, and they are the rays. Some sharks have stripes, some have spots. So they are very, very diverse, a very, very diverse group. And together, parallel with the diversity of the morphologies of the shark, it goes also their reproductive strategies. So we all know that Nemo was the only survival of his litter of little eggs. And we all know that the salmons go on the rivers to be able to spawn and reproduce and lay their eggs. So we know about how fish reproduce. But how do sharks reproduce? How baby sharks are born? Many people don't know anything about it. So sharks and rays have what we call sexual dimorphism. It means that by looking at a shark from the outside, you can say that if it's a female or a male, and you can do so by looking at their pelvic fins. So here in the red circles, you can see that these are the pelvic fins. And if you look closely in between those pelvic fins, you can see that males are different from females because they have 2, let's say, sausages. So they have 2, let's say, penises that are called actually claspers. So the males have 2 reproductive organs in this area that you can see that females don't have. And they use it because they have an internal fertilization. So the male and female sharks and rays need to mate in order to give birth to new babies. So we said that Nemo was born from eggs, so the female in the bony fishes, the female lays the eggs and the male fertilizes them, but in the sharks and rays world, it cannot happen. So there needs to be an internal fertilization. So what happens is that the male grabs the female from the pectoral fin. So the male grabs the female from the pectoral fin and he turns her, so they get to be ventral, so on the ventral side. And this way, the male is able to place his clasper into the cloaca of the female. So this process can be very aggressive. So I'm not gonna show you the video of sharks mating because I don't wanna shock you, because it can be a really very, very impressive and, and very aggressive. But I'm gonna show you something more romantic and gentle, that is the reproduction in the manta rays. So here, I'm gonna show you a video of what is a courtship behavior. So this is called mating train. And during this time is when many males are following a female, sometimes for hours, sometimes even for days. So there is this mating train going on. So the female is in the front and she goes around, she is like dancing, and the males follow her for a long time. And at the end, there will be just one winner that will take it all. And you will see here how it happens. So the male, again, he grabs the female from the pectoral fin, and he, with the mouth, so he keeps her still, and he is able to insert his clasper into the cloaca. So just one clasper will be used for this act, and the other is there just in case something doesn't work. And as I said, in sharks especially, the mating can be very, very aggressive. And actually females can end up with very, very deep scars and very, very damaged. They get almost to death sometimes in some species, because sometimes many males try to mate with her. And so, as you can see here, these are the signs of mating. So they're called the mating scars. And you can see them, of course, on the sharks because they have big teeth, and so they can make a lot of damage to the female. But as you can see in the red circle here, also the manta rays get to have some mating scars. And that's also what makes us understand that a female has just got into a mating process. But somebody could say, okay, but manta rays don't have teeth, right? Well, they actually do have teeth. So manta rays have teeth just on the lower jaw, and like other filter feeders, like the whale shark, they eat plankton, as everybody I think know. So they don't chase their prey, but they just filter the water and get what they need. But they have teeth, and these teeth are very, very important in the moment of the mating. So these teeth are what allows the male to hold on the female fin, and so be able to reproduce. Okay? So let's go back. But after all that mating, do sharks lay eggs like Nemo or not? And I'm gonna answer to this question with a very, very typical phrase that we biologists use most of the time when we are asked some question. And it depends on the species. So again, we have two big groups of sharks and rays, okay? So there are some sharks that actually lay eggs, and they are called oviparous. And so they release the eggs in the environment, and then the baby develops inside. And it happens in around 40% of all sharks, and in just one order of rays. And then on the other side, we have the viviparous species. So the species that give birth to babies that are already ready to live. And it's called live bearing. And it usually have a long gestation because the baby needs to grow inside of the uterus of the mother. And this is what happens in around 60% of all sharks and in most of the rays. Okay, Now I'm gonna talk you a little bit more specific about these two groups. So the oviparous species, the species that lay eggs. So the egg have a very, very important role in the reproduction because it is a protection for the embryo that is developing during its development, right? So the female chooses very, very carefully where to lay the eggs. So it's not that she just releases them around, but she chooses some areas that are called nursery areas where the mother decides to give more opportunity to the baby to develop inside the egg. And then once it will be born, it will be in a safe place or a place where the baby will find food. And so they choose very carefully the place. So the eggs are not a closed box that nothing can happen to them. But there is a little bit of exchange of gases from the water outside so that the baby shark and the baby ray is able to get the oxygen that it needs through the water. So there is a little exchange, but they are a very protective case. And inside the baby develops, and from the little egg, it starts to grow and grow until it's ready to be born. And the period, the hatching period can vary. So there are some species that take just a few months and some that can need up to 12 months to be able to get born. So these eggs, as I said, they need to stay in a place that is safe for them. And so the mother uses the tendrils, that are those structures that you see over there, that they use in order to attach, firmly attach these eggs to some substrate. So it can be some corals or some seagrass. So the mother chooses the place, she picks the egg to the place, and then she leaves, and she will never see them again. Another very interesting fact is that there are some kind of sharks that are called the bullhead sharks or horn sharks, or the projection shark also does this. They have these screw-like eggs. So this egg has a very, very particular shape. And the female, what she does is that she screws these egg inside of the bottom of the seafloor, in between the rocks, in a safe place where a few predators will be able to find it, and where the baby will be able to get out of the egg and be able to find food, okay? So now let's talk about the viviparous species. Okay, so the sharks that release the babies already ready to live, they are divided into two other groups. So there are some that are placental. It means that they have a connection. The baby and the mother are connected through this structure that is very similar to the placenta that we all know also in mammals. And then there is another group in which there is not this direct connection from the mother to the baby, and they are called aplacental. In this case, the mother have different ways by which she can nourish her embryos inside of her uterus, and I'm gonna talk you in specific of every single way later on, okay? So the placental species are the ones that have this connection, right? So it's not a placental exactly like the human placenta, but actually it is a yolk sac. So the yolk that the egg has, when it starts to develop, it modifies and it becomes a sort of placenta. So it attached to the uterus of the mother. And this connection allows gases and nutrients to pass from the mother system to the baby. Okay, so it works like a lot of energy few pops usually in this way of reproduction. But when they are born, they are very, very strong and very developed and very ready to live, okay? And these sharks are born usually with still an umbilical cord, and you can easily see the umbilical scar after when they are just born, okay? This is the case, for example, of the hammerheads. So the hammerheads, there are many species of hammerheads, and they can have usually around 10 to 20 pups. Sometimes they can have a little more, but as you can see here, every little embryo is attached to the uterus of the mother through this placenta. So the sharks grow, and as you can see, they are the exact same shape as the mother. So they already have their hammer, they already have their little fins. So it's very, very curious, very interesting to see. And so when they are ready to go, they are born in the environment. Okay? So this was the placental way. Now I'm going to talk to you about the different ways that the mother nourishes the embryos in the uterus without a placenta. Okay? So one of the strategies implicates that the female makes some eggs, let's say eggs, that they are not hard-shelled eggs, and she doesn't release them, but she keeps these eggs inside of her uterus until the babies are already formed and ready to swim by themselves, okay? So the small embryo doesn't get the nutrients directly from the mother, but she gets the nutrients from its own yolk. Okay, as you can see here, these babies have this yolk still attached. So when they end all the nutrients of this yolk, they will be ready to go out in the open ocean. In this case, the females can have many pups because there is just a little bit of energy that the female has to give at the beginning of the gestation with the eggs, and then there is no more expenditure of energy from the female. So it allows to have many babies, but they are born small compared to the size of the mother. This is the case, for example, of the tiger shark. So the tiger shark can have up to 70 pups per gestation period. And as you can see here, they have their own little yolk sac, and they depend on that during the whole gestation period. They are in a little egg, let's say, in a miniature-sized shape of the adults, okay? And then the whale shark. They have also these type of reproduction, and the whale sharks are very, very unique because they can have up to 300 pups per single gestation period. So as you can see here, these are the babies that they were found inside the belly of a big pregnant female whale shark. And they are born when they are around 50 centimeters. As you can see in this picture, this lovely little baby whale shark. So they are born very small. If you imagine that a mature big female can be up to 20 meters long and they give birth to 50 centimeters babies, it's like a very, very small baby compared to the size of the mother. So if you cannot imagine how big they are compared to their babies, imagine that it's like if a woman gives birth to a baby that is the size of a peanut, okay? So this small baby would be alive and ready to live already on itself. So imagine that a woman having her uterus a baby of this size, but not one, 300. So it's a lot of babies, but they are born very small. So the chances to survive are really low. So that's why they have so many, hoping that they will survive. Okay, so another type of nourishing that female sharks can have to their babies is typical of, for example, the Thresher Sharks. And in this type of reproduction, the female ovaries keep sending little eggs unfertilized. So there is no fertilized yet eggs, just yolk and nutrients. So the ovary keeps sending these little eggs to the uterus so that the baby inside of the uterus is able to feed, actually is actively feeding on the eggs. So it's a lot of expenditure of energy from the mother. So that's why they usually have just a few pups, like 2 to 4 pups. But they are born very big because the female keeps giving these nutrients to the baby, and so they grow very big. So they have just fewer pups, but with more chances to survive because they are bigger, and so they are less good for predators. And another very famous species that have this kind of feeding is the great white. So the great white sharks can have up to 10 pups per single gestation period. And they are born when they are around 1.5 meters, so they are pretty big babies. And what is interesting is that the female is sending these eggs, and the baby in the uterus, they are eating so much that, as you can see here, they have this extended stomach. So it's full of joy, full of nutrients, so that it just eats everything it can and then uses this energy to be able to develop and grow until it's 1.5 meters, and then the mother will release them into the ocean. And they will be already ready to feed, ready to do everything on their own, okay? An extreme way of surviving for the babies in the uterus is the one that is of the sand tiger shark. That is the only known species to have this kind of reproduction. So the mother, instead of sending eggs, just unfertilized eggs, the mother fertilizes the eggs. They are all in the uterus, and then the baby, the embryo that develops first and grows stronger and faster is the one that is gonna feed on his own brothers. So they develop very strong teeth. You can see this, the image on the corner is the microscope image of the teeth in the embryo. So the embryo inside of the uterus of the mother just feeds on all his brothers. So there will be just one pup per uterus because it will eat all the others. So this is a very extreme behavior, and it's called adelphophagy. So it's a very unique way that some sharks survive into the uterus until they are born. And now the last option that sharks and rays have. So this is typical of rays, is typical of big rays like the manta rays, and it's called uterine milk. So in this strategy, the mother uterus have a very thick wall, and it secretes this liquid that is very lipid and protein rich. So it's very, very nutrient. So the babies are swimming in the uterus inside this liquid that they actually are drinking. So they are actually drinking this milk that is not really real milk like we imagine, like the mammal's milk, but it's a uterine, let's say, milk. It's called milk because it's white and because it's a liquid, but it's not that. And in the uterus, the babies have been shown to be actively pumping, actively eating this milk. So these are some images from the ultrasound that was done in Japan during the gestation period of a captive manta ray. So they saw that during the gestation, the baby was drinking the milk. So inside of the uterus, the manta rays are feeding, and they are circulating the liquid inside of the uterus. And then they are able to grow very big. Imagine that a manta ray is born at almost 2 meters wide. So the mother can be 4 meters and the baby 2 meters. So they are born very, very big. So there is a big investment of the mother in energy, a lot of energy that she invests into the offspring. Okay, so they just have one pup at a time in the case of the mantas and mobula rays, because they really need a lot of energy, a lot of milk in order to have very big babies that will have more chances to survive, because they don't have any defense at all, the babies, when they're born, right? Okay, and how long can gestation, pregnancy last in sharks and rays? Well, again, it depends on the species. So there are some sharks that, for example, like the hammerheads can have a 5 to 6 months gestation period, or the manta rays up to 1 year. So it depends mainly on the species and on the strategy that they use for the nourishment of the embryos. And another interesting fact is that you can see pregnant females because they have big bellies, okay? So you can see some pictures here where the females have these very enlarged bellies. And so you can see them and say, "Ooh, that's pregnant." But sometimes it's like with women. So you see a woman that is a little bit rounded, but you cannot say for sure, are you pregnant? Because maybe she ate too much pizza the night before. So it can be a little tricky sometimes. But as you can see in this picture, when they are at the last part of the day, it's very easy to see the pregnancy. So as you can see in the manta ray, in this manta ray, in the case of the rays, they have the bump not only on the belly, but you can see it also on the dorsal surface. So they have this big bump on the back. That is a signal that something is growing in there, okay? And another very interesting fact is that female sharks and rays, they have not one, but 2 uteri. So each ovary is connected to 1 uterus. And the most interesting and funny fact is that actually the babies, if they are just in 1 uterus, they can swim into the other uterus. So it was seen in an aquarium that a nurse shark was pregnant in 1 uterus, and some days after, the baby was in the other uterus. And they got like crazy because well, we saw that the baby was in the other uterus. And so they saw that actually the baby can swim from one to another very easily. In this case, because it was nourishing the embryos on eggs, on unfertilized eggs. So the baby probably finished the eggs in 1 uterus and went to check how it was in the other one. So we don't know in how many species it happened, but I think it's very, very interesting fact. And another thing is that female sharks can mate with the males, and then they can store the sperm after mating. So if the conditions are not good, they just store the sperm. And when everything is good, the season is good, there is food enough for being able to go on with the pregnancy, they can fertilize their eggs and start the pregnancy. So it's a very, very useful way to store. Like nowadays we see that people store toilet paper. Well, female sharks, they store sperm, okay? And another thing is that they can store the sperms from many different males. So if a female mates with many males, she's able to store those sperms and to fertilize her eggs with different sperms from different fathers. So the leader inside of the uterus, the brothers can be from different males. So they are brothers, just half brothers, because they can have different fathers. So it's very, very, very interesting, I think. And the most interesting is that female sharks, they can have babies even without a male. So it was seen, of course, in aquarium, where there were these females that were caught when they were babies, and they stayed in the aquarium for years. And then all of a sudden, she has a baby. And nobody could understand how she could have it. Well, it's called Parasinogenesis, and it's thought that the female, in the condition of lacking a male, she's able to fertilize her eggs with her own eggs. So instead of egg and sperm, 2 eggs mix together, and they make the DNA enough, they make like the genetic material to have a full embryo. So it's very, very interesting, and I think very few people know about it. So I wanted to share with you all of these information. And I'm gonna finish my presentation with a beautiful video of what happens after. So we've talked about the mating, we have talked about the gestation, and now let's see how it happens to the birth. So here is a video of the captive birth of a manta ray in Japan. So it's the manta ray that was followed during the whole gestation period with the ultrasound. And as you can see, the embryo inside of the uterus of the mother is wrapped. So it has its fins on the back, like a burrito. And so they have, they are rolled inside of the uterus. And when it's time, they get out, they give birth, the manta give birth. And you can see that the mother just goes on swimming. She leaves her ready to defend themselves, and they are ready to live their life without any mother help. Okay, so in sharks and rays there is absolutely no parental care, so there is no shark will have any help from its mother, and so they are very autonomous on their own. And I hope I have given you a lot of information, maybe too much, but I hope you learned something more about the interesting world of the sharks and rays reproduction. So thank you for listening to me, and I'm open to questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Tania. That was really awesome. That's amazing to see those videos of shark and ray reproduction. I mean, it's truly incredible. I've seen the mating scars. I used to work in a place where we had the ragged tooth sharks. Like, it was a gestation area where all the female ragged tooth sharks, and during certain times of the year, all the females would come back to the pinnacle, and they would just be covered in scars, like they got in a fight with a boat or something. And it's just incredible to see what they put up with. But great.
Yeah, actually, that's why I didn't want to show videos of sharks mating, because it's really aggressive.
Yeah,
so sometimes the females are just like great to show everyone. So I went for the romance of manta rays.
Yeah, that was good. Well, I'm sure we had a lot of people appreciate that. So if you guys have any questions for Tania, then you could just post them in the Q&A section. We have a few already. Ro asks, awesome talk, Tania. He says, do all species of sharks do the biting ritual where the male clings onto the female, or are there other species that have other rituals? That's pretty much.
So sharks don't have hands, okay? So in order to have mating, they need to hang on the female in some ways. So the only way they have is with the bite. So they just have the mouth to be able to grab the female. So as far as I know, all the species need to do that, because of course they need sometimes to be swimming, and so it's harder to do it swimming and holding on the female and doing it all together. So yeah, all of the sharks and rays usually do that. Someone more romantically, someone more aggressively, but they do.
Yeah, exactly. And have you ever, I know it's really, really rare to see underwater, have you ever witnessed the sharks mating or giving birth personally?
No,
yeah.
No, I haven't. But we have done a new one. So we saw a baby manta inside of the uterus of the mother. So a couple of years ago, we did an expedition together with Whale Shark Mexico, and with National Geographic. We went to Reproduction archipelago, and we had this ultrasound, portable underwater ultrasound. So we were able to do the very, very first in the world ultrasound on a pregnant manta ray in the open ocean. So we saw exactly that baby mouth with the fins wrapped on the back in the open ocean, and it was amazing. But no, unluckily I haven't seen that. It's very rare, and yeah. I wish someday I will be able to witness that. But yeah. For the moment, no.
Yeah, it's very, very rare. I've only heard of a few people in all of my travels and all the people that I've met that have seen it. So very rare. Yeah. He also says, I know you talked a little bit about how only some of them survive, but do you know any of the statistics of like how many pups usually survive? So out of like the 300 whale shark pups or the 70 tiger shark pups, like about how many survive? Do they know any of the statistics of that?
No, I think there has not been any study about that.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult in the open ocean, especially on species that have a wide distribution and that are pelagic, like the whale sharks or the tiger sharks. So probably just a few of them will make it. Sorry for the birds.
Right,
So
right.
they are they really are very small when they are born. So in the ocean, everything that is small is more susceptible to be eaten by something bigger. So probably of the 300 baby whale sharks, I guess that just 3 or 4 will make it because they are very, very easily predated.
Right.
Like in the turtles, you know?
Right,
The
exactly.
same.
And I mean, they don't even really know where the whale sharks are giving birth, so it's hard to study, you know,
Exactly.
how many whale sharks are surviving if they don't even know where they're
Yeah,
being birthed. So still so much research
exactly.
to be done on all this. Um, so
Yeah.
Camilla
So just
asks,
a little bit.
yeah, exactly. So Camilla asks, she says, can we say there is a relationship between the pregnancy's time and the size and development of the pups?
Yeah, of course. So, of course, the most of the time the baby stays into the uterus or in the egg, because also in the egg it has more time to develop and get bigger. And bigger means that has more chances to survive. So there are like two strategies, you know. So you can choose to have many babies, but they are very vulnerable, very small, and easily predated, or just having a few of them, like manta rays that just have one, but is half the size of the mother. So is almost as big as an adult. So
Right.
they are different ways. So you can like give it to the nature, or hold on to your baby and spend all of your energy on that one, taking care of that one, and hopefully it will have more chances to not be eaten.
Right, right. Cool. Very cool. Great question. So Jose says, thanks Tanya for your amazing talk. Do you know if pups born by parthenogenesis are healthy, or do they have defects or reduced lifespan?
Okay, so it was seen just in a few species and in aquarium environment. So it's hard to say what happens in the environment, because of course in an aquarium there are just lower chances to get eaten. But so I think I remember that the baby that was born from a hammerhead, I think it was actually eaten because there were other big sharks in the tank, and they didn't expect a baby shark to be born, and so it was eaten. But it's very hard, because like saying that what happens in the aquarium is the same that happens into the real environment is very hard. So I think that they must be as vital and healthy as normal babies, because they have the genetic material. Of course, it comes all from the mother, but there is this fusion of two eggs. So actually, there can be some little variation in the genes.
Yeah. Cool. Very cool. So Victoria doesn't have a question, but she says, amazing talk. I learned so much. And she says, I have so many incredible facts to share to my young students and fishermen of the coastal community I live on. So thank you. That's really, really cool.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, this was exactly my idea, to give some interesting facts that people would remember for the rest of their life.
Yeah, really cool. And it's cool that she's sharing it with her students and the people in a coastal community. So
Yeah.
really, really awesome.
Yeah.
So Darren says, hello, Tanya. Thanks for the super talk. So I have a whale shark question for you. Do you think that whale shark pups move around inside the mother's uterus before they are born? Interesting question.
So it might happen because they don't have these connection to the uterus. So they could be able to move around, but I think they would have no need to, because when they saw the baby going from one uterus from the other, it was because they were feeding on the unfertilized eggs. So probably the baby finished the one in one uterus, and so migrated to the other to see if there were more eggs. So since the whale shark have their nourishment in their yolk sac, they would not need to go and look for more because they already have all there. So the whale sharks don't feed inside of the uterus. They just rely on the yolk, and then when the yolk is depleted, they just are born. Yeah. So I don't think so, but of course we are not sure. Yeah. It's hard to know. Yeah.
Another room for more research.
Exactly.
And Sarah has another interesting question about whale sharks. She says, super presentation, thank you. Even if they don't take care of their babies, do you think that it's possible that they recognize them when they meet again? If there's any sort of relationship at all?
Probably not. Actually, it is thought that some species give birth in some very protected areas, like, for example, in mangroves or in some very shallow areas, so that the adults of the same species and even their own mother will not be able to predate them. So they will have more chances. So they don't have any clue about who is their baby. So I don't think they would recognize them at all.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. So Sue says, in the virgin birth scenario, are the babies genetic clones of their mother?
So it's a hard question because since it is thought that they are the mixing of two eggs, so the genetic material of each egg is not exactly the same because there is a little bit of genetic exchange during the meiosis. So there is a little bit of genetic differences. Of course, the material is the same, okay? So it's divided into the eggs, and then these eggs have a little bit of mixture of the genes of the mother, and most of the genetic material is the same, but there can be a little bit of genetic mixture. And so I think they are not exactly the same clones, because this would happen if the egg was already with the information on its own, and just one egg gave birth to one pup. But since it's the mixture of two eggs, I'm not a geneticist, so I don't know if I'm answering this very well, but I don't think it's just the clone.
Right.
Yeah.
From an evolutionary standpoint, it would reduce genetic diversity, and it wouldn't really promote.
So usually it happens when the conditions are not good, right? So if there are not good conditions and there are no males around, for example, this is like an extreme measure. So in the aquarium, it happens, but we don't know if also in nature it happens. Right. So maybe it's just a response that just happens in the aquariums, because maybe in the environment there are much more chances for the sharks to mate. So there is still a lot, and actually it was discovered just a few years ago. It's not well known yet. It's just starting to get known.
Okay, cool, good answer. So Cesar asks, in the time that you've been in La Paz, have you noticed a reduction of the manta population? And if so, what do you think is the reason for this?
Okay, so I've been living here in La Paz since 2014, so almost 6 years. And me personally, in 6 years, I haven't seen a reduction, because in these years, manta rays are protected, so they are not fished anymore here in Mexico. But in the past, it happened that manta rays were caught. And so in past, there was a very big reduction of manta rays, especially here in the Gulf of California. So inside the Gulf, there was a population of manta rays that were coming around La Paz, and there were many of them, and then all of a sudden they disappeared. So it happened in the past, but during the last 6 years, actually, probably manta rays in the places where they are seen, like in Revillagigedo Archipelago, Socorro Island, over there, actually the population, since it has the protection it needs, it's probably growing, actually. Of course, it's very slow process, because if you catch an animal, of course you take it out of the population. But to give time to recover for an animal that needs 1 year to 1 year of gestation period before being born, and takes so long to get to be mature again, to have another baby and start a new generation, it takes a lot of time. Yeah. So in just 6 years is very hard to see a difference, but it happened before, and it could happen if manta rays were caught. There would be a very, very quick reduction in the population that would need a lot of time to recover.
Yeah. Okay. Good to know. Awesome. So Rafael asks, what can we do at a local level and internationally to educate fishermen regarding the protection of sharks? It seems that many cultures still to this day don't protect sharks, and when they do catch them, they don't eat them or use them in a manner that would be considered more respectful.
It's a very, very hard question, and many people have tried for decades to do some sensibilization about how the shark population are vulnerable, because, as I said, many species just have a few pups. They have long gestation periods and a very small litter, and they take a lot of many years sometimes to get mature before starting to have another generation. So this makes sharks very vulnerable from the overexploitation. So of course, some species of sharks have a lot faster reproductive rate, and they have many babies, sometimes more than one gestation per year. So maybe those populations, those species might be less vulnerable, and maybe some like sustainable fisheries might be able not to deplete the population in the shortest time. But some species of sharks, like, I don't know, like the Thresher Sharks that just have 2 babies at a time, most of the time. And they are so vulnerable, they get fished in many places so hardly. So these populations will probably see a decline very, very, very soon. So sometimes it's hard to make a fisherman understand that he will not be able to do that for the rest of his life, because the shark population will decrease because they need to eat. So sometimes here in Baja, for example, shark's meat is eaten. So it really sustains some families that have nothing else to live on. So it's a very hard work to do, and many generations of marine biologists and other researchers have tried to make a change in this way to reduce the shark catches. But also here in Mexico, for example, manta rays are protected, the white sharks are protected, whale sharks are protected. Some species are protected, but of course, all the others are still caught. So for example, mobula rays, they are protected also here in Mexico. And they have also just 1 pup and a very long gestation period, and they aggregate in big numbers. So here in Mexico, here in Baja, they are still caught as bycatch sometimes. So it's hard because with the bycatch, for example, people like fishermen don't wanna catch that species. But putting a net makes all the species that are around that can fall into the net and be caught and die of that. So it's a very hard to push on these aspects. And of course, collaborating with the fishermen and giving alternatives to the fishermen will be a possible best way to reduce these shark fishing.
Yeah, I agree, and it's not just the targeted fishing of sharks. I think that there's so much light shown on the targeted fishing of sharks, but there's so many issues with overfishing in general. I mean, the bycatch from tuna and swordfish fisheries alone is tremendous, causing tremendous damage, and then going to the culling of sharks in places like the Great Barrier Reef for tourist destinations to keep tourists safe, that are culling sharks for not for nutritional, not for selling them, but just to prevent them from, causing shark attacks. So it's not just looking at targeted fishing, but just looking at our everyday consumption of fish from these massive industries, these industrial fishing industries. So it's, we a lot of times look at these little fishermen, but it's a lot of times these massive trawlers that are causing the most damage.
Exactly.
Especially for pelagic species. So looking at all the industries, but awesome. So we have so Jose asked a really interesting question. Do sharks use pheromone cues to know when to mate?
So sharks have hormones too. So there must be some mechanism about that. So some sharks and rays, for example, they aggregate in big numbers in some places, and they do so because they have more chances to find a mate. And these are usually seasonal aggregation. So what drives all those sharks from many places around the world to gather together and meet in one very specific spot in order to mate? It's still most of it unknown, but of course there is these signaling that probably is going on, but there is still a lot to know about it. It's not well known yet what drives it.
Right. Okay. Very cool. And Sarah says, do you know where they grow up when they're born? Like whale sharks being so small, and it's very rare that anyone sees a baby whale shark, which is a really good question. It's how many photos on the internet do you see of a baby whale shark?
Exactly. So there are some species that, as I say, they choose shallow water or very protected environments like the mangroves roots, in between the roots, where they just release the babies there so that they are protected from most of the predators, because the big sharks cannot go inside of the mangroves to feed on the babies. So those species like lemon shark, for example, they use these environments to protect their babies. But with whale sharks, it's very, very interesting. It's the biggest fish into the ocean, and we don't know where they give birth. So if you are a big whale shark mother and you have 300 babies in your belly, and you cannot go into the mangroves to give birth because you would get stuck because you are massive, right? So probably, since we haven't seen small whale sharks around coastal areas, and the humans are all over the world near the coast, so the hypothesis is that probably those big pregnant females give birth in the depth or in open ocean, where there are less chances that we get to see them. So that's why we don't know where they give birth. So there were just a couple of sightings of newborn whale shark, as the picture that I showed. And recently, also, it was found a baby whale shark, very, very small, that was just born. But imagine, we are everywhere. And whale shark have 300 babies. If there were 300 babies around La Paz, someone would have seen it. at least one, you know. But in most of the places, you never get to see baby whale sharks until they are 1.5 meters, 2 meters. So even here in La Paz, where we have small whale sharks, we get to see them when they are at least 2 meters.
Yeah.
So the smallest we have seen, from there 50 centimeters to 2 meters. So that's, we have no idea. So that's why we think that maybe they give birth in the open ocean at depth, where there are maybe less predators and where they have less chances to be eaten. That's a hypothesis that still needs to be answered.
Yeah, it's true. I love that we're going to see the juvenile whale sharks in La Paz, but they're still the size of the entire boat.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Myrtle says, thank you for the amazing presentation. So question for the sharks. Do you know if they show aggressive behavior when they're pregnant?
That's a good question. I don't think so. I don't think so. So I'm not sure about it, but I don't think, because, for example, there have been some research groups around the world that are able to do some research on pregnant tiger sharks, for example. They have done ultrasound on pregnant tiger sharks, but of course they catch them with the line, and they keep it alive to be able to do these research. They tag them and everything, but I don't think they are more aggressive. I'm not sure about it, because I think that in the open ocean, if you are a diver or you're a snorkeler and you get to see a shark, you have the same behavior as a non-pregnant one. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure. It would be interesting to research a little bit more about it.
In my experience, I've worked in 2 places where we had a lot of female pregnant sharks throughout the seasons. Okay. And we had one where we had pregnant gray nurse sharks, or ragged tooth sharks. And throughout the seasons, the pregnant ones were actually more calm. I don't know if it was because they were trying to conserve their energy, or they were just tired. But they were often just would come in closer. They just were more calm. They had a much more calm demeanor about them. Sorry, they have some traffic coming down. It's a little bit loud. And then same in Tiger Beach, the really big pregnant females, they just didn't care as much. They were very, very chill, very calm compared to the younger non-pregnant females. They were just a little bit more, they weren't aggressive. They were just like coming in faster. Their behavior was not as calm as the pregnant females. So from a non-research but a purely observational standpoint, the females, the pregnant females that I've always dived with have been consistently more calm and more well-mannered. So
yeah, I guess so. I would think the same. Yeah.
It could be just purely, it could be purely just from a conserving energy. I'm not sure.
Exactly. They spend a lot of energy in the pregnancy, because really for having many pups, they need a lot of energy. But even the ones that have a few pups, they give a lot of energy to make it grow bigger. So it's a very big expenditure of energy. And actually that's why usually females in sharks and rays are usually bigger, because they need more energy to go on with their pregnancy.
Yeah, cool. So we just have time for just a couple more questions here. So Christine says, she said that whale shark is her favorite. And she said, I know that they have very little teeth. Do they also use those teeth for mating? And have you seen them mate? So the whale sharks? Yeah. So they like you said, they have really small teeth, but do they use those teeth to hang on like some of the other sharks do?
Yeah, exactly. So that's probably why the whale sharks and manta rays and the basking shark, they do have teeth, even if they don't use them for feeding. So probably they use them almost just for reproduction. So that way they are able to hold on the fin of the females. It was never seen around the world, a whale shark mating. There was a sighting, I think like 1 year ago, more or less, with a drone. They got to see two whale sharks interacting. One was upside down. So it might have been mating, but it's not 100% sure. So it's very rare. So I've never witnessed that. And here in La Paz, we have mainly juveniles. So just a few big animals. So it's very not often, it's not common to see the whale sharks mating. There are some sharks that have been filmed around the world mating, sharks that are not pelagic sharks, mainly like reef sharks that are more used to divers maybe, so they don't care too much if there is a diver filming around. So they have been seen, other species with this behavior of biting the fin, holding on, turning the female upside down and being able to mate. So we guess that in the whale sharks it happens the same, but of course we have never witnessed that, so we don't know.
Cool, awesome. And last question here. So also mantas can have multiple babies. Are they from different fathers as well?
Okay, so manta rays usually have just one baby at a time, because as I said, they have very big babies. They are half the size of the mothers, so they really don't have much space in there. But I've talked with some researchers focused on manta rays that have seen manta rays for decades, and they say that it might be that possibly some manta rays have two babies, because like some super enlarged bodies that they say it's too pregnant to be just one. So probably that it can happen, but it was never seen. So we don't know if there is actually some multiple babies in one single pregnancy. And we can't know if these, in the case of the manta rays, it can be from different fathers. Probably yes, because sharks and rays have these little organ. I didn't go much into the anatomy part because I didn't want it to be too boring, but they have this little organ that is called oviducal gland, that is the place where the storage of the sperm happens. So they have this organ where the females keep these sperms, and they use them when the conditions are good and they can go on with the pregnancy. So potentially also manta rays can have multiple paternity, but I think it's very rare because it's so rare to have two babies in one manta. We are not even sure if there are two babies in one single pregnancy. So most of the time it was seen that just one.
Yeah, cool. Well, this is an amazing, amazing talk. Thank you so much for joining us today, Tania. I hope that get to meet you one day. Come up to Cabo or come down and meet you in La Paz. But yeah, what you're doing is amazing. Congrats on your doctorate. This is truly amazing research, and I can't wait to see where all of this takes you in the future. So
thank you very much.
Awesome. Well, again, if you have any questions, just send us an email or contact us on social media and we'll put you in touch with Tania. Otherwise, yeah, you guys have a great day and we'll see you on the next Ocean Stories. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Tania.
Thank you very much. Bye. Thank you, everyone, for joining.